All right. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Hello, everyone. Hi. Okay, so we are about to begin. Oh, actually, beginning.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's supposed to be a New York communal call.
New York is here. New York is here, yes.
Okay, so I am Herbie Revales. I'm going to be your host today, or your co-host.
Okay, one of two. I love it though. I love it. I am B Hawk Snipes. Pronouns they them and she her. You know, holding it down for the Bronx. Okay, come on, give it up for the Bronx. Not too much. And also, I'm one of the members for the BTFA collective, so we're excited to be here, okay?
Yeah, I love that. We are excited to be here. Y'all need to sound excited. Can we do a round of applause just for tonight, please? Thank you. Right.
We're voting!
Voting. Okay, so we do want to thank a couple of people, well, you guys for showing up, but we also want to thank the folks at home because we are streaming live on Queer Tea, Native Son, and the Center's respective YouTube channels. So shout out to our virtual audience. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Give it up.
Clap it up for the virtual audience. Just clap whenever there's a gap. Okay, whenever you hear silence, girl, clap for me. Thank you. But we also want to thank our sponsors as well, which are the LGBT Center, where we're located right now, and also See, the girls are getting it. See, when there's a pause, you clap. Native Son and Gilead. So we want to thank them for sponsoring tonight.
Oh yes. And before we go down to get to the breakdown of everything, I wanted to just have a moment of silence for our ancestors, for the ones that have paved the way for us to be here today, for the indigenous folks for living and thriving on their land, the Lenape land to be exact. So we can all just bow our heads. You also at home, please bow your heads in a joint collective breath. We're going to inhale, exhale. Ashe, Afam, Amen.
Okay. Well, I know that's right. I felt that in my African ancestral shadow.
Okay.
And you know what's crazy when you said bow your heads? I was going to say bow your eyes, close your heads. I don't know why my head went there. Anyway, another important announcement as we are entering the festivities tonight. Tomorrow, October 26th, 2024, is the last day to register to vote in New York State. So we want to make sure that if you have not registered, you tiptoe down. Okay, actually, to vote.org. You can go, it's just that simple. Vote.org. You can find all the information that you need there, your poll site, etc. Tomorrow is also the first day for early voting in New York State. So, yeah, just be informed, make sure you're registered, and make sure you vote. Also, you can start early voting tomorrow, but you have until, November 5th. I know many of us will be procrastinating and voting on election day. So you have until November 5th, Tuesday, election day.
We be busy, okay? People got rent to pay on time and work to do. So, you have some time, but don't wait too long, okay? Because those lines are going to be crazy. Yeah. They're going to be crazy. Because I know one thing about New York, we show up and we show out, okay? You want to break it down to hashtags and let them know?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All that other fun stuff.
So we're gonna eventually introduce some of our panelists and our moderators tonight. But obviously, we want you to take videos, take photos, take a picture at the photo booth, and we want you to use hashtag #MyVoteMyVoice. You can use hashtag #VoteWithPride, Black Queer Vote. Just make sure that when you're taking pictures, you're also tagging the center, you're tagging Gilead, you're tagging Native Son, so that we can spread the tentacles of this event as far as we can and reach as many people as possible. That's the goal, right? To get all kinds of folks, but particularly Black queer folks, out and voting.
Very important. Very important. Okay. Oh yes. I love this. Such an inclusive moment. Okay. We got the they thems, the she hers, the he hims here tonight. We love that. Zazum's ears, they're in the building as well. Inclusivity is very important, hey. But speaking of inclusivity, we got to bring up our fab moderators for tonight. We have Drum roll. Dr. Carla Smith. Oh yes, come on, Dr. Carla Smith, CEO of the Center, and Emil Rubicon, founder of Native Son.
At home. My name is Dr. Carla Smith. I use she and her pronouns. I am the CEO of the center, and I just want to take a minute. Emil and I are going to connect with you all, but I want to make sure and welcome everybody to the center, to this special program tonight, Black, Queer, and Here, a community forum on the 2024 election. A special thank you to Emil and Native Son for their partnership with the center and for being part of my village as I stepped into this new role as the first CEO of color at the center. In 40 years. Okay. We're so excited for this opportunity to host this evening's forum here. We're so clear about the extremely high stakes of this upcoming elections for LGBTQ plus communities, and even more directly for Black LGBTQ plus people. For over 40 years, the center has been an important vessel for the gathering in community, and in other times of uncertainty, LGBTQ plus people have organized here in the direction for a better society for queer people and for all people. We're so proud to continue in that tradition tonight and in all of our work. This is the most consequential election of my lifetime, and I'm sure it feels that way for many of you as well. So we wanted to make some intentional space and time for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Carla. Give it up for Dr. Carla. Right. And for hosting us here tonight. Really want to thank you all for showing up. I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you're watching this later, thank you for streaming this event. It's really, really important, right? How do we gather youth? How do we gather Black LGBTQ and POC youth, right, at a time such as this? So I want to echo Dr. Smith's really wonderful welcome, and thank you all for joining us. And on behalf of Native Son and our community of over 80,000 Black, gay, and queer men, you heard me? 80,000? Yes. Across the country, we thank you for being here. Native Son is inspiration and empowerment for Black, gay, and queer men, and we amplify the voice and visibility of our community in every space that we enter, right? Let's do a little finger taps, okay? And y'all gonna get with it. By the end of the program, y'all gonna be in the call and response of it all. We want to thank Gilead, our sponsors tonight, because Gilead helped make this an even bigger and better event. And so we're grateful for their sponsorship and support. And we want to thank Queerity, right? So Native Son has a channel on Queerity, which is part of Cube Digital, and they are streaming this tonight. So we thank them for their support and allyship. I also want to thank our co-hosts, our panelists, our moderators, our special video guests that we have for you tonight, for their work, right? For showing up, for doing this work intentionally, for being activists and spokespersons, and for sharing their lived experiences with us. This is a momentous election, right? Probably the biggest in the history of our lives. So it's really important that we are present. In 2022, Native Son hosted the first Black, Queer, and Here town hall at the Apollo Theater. And so this is an extension of that. And I spoke to Dr. Carla, and we really wanted to bring this to the center and bring this to younger folks, include voices from all over the spectrum and a breadth of LGBTQ community.
We were also really, really clear when we talked about this opportunity that some perspectives deserve particular attention in this moment. That trans and gender nonconforming people of color are most at risk in this election. And that therefore we all have a responsibility to speak to those issues and raise the alarms about what the consequences of this election could be for our community. We want to thank our teams, both at the Center and Native Son, for putting this together this evening. Now, yes, give it up, give it up. Thank you. Before I get off the stage and out of the way, little disclaimer. Quick note, the Center and Native Son are nonpartisan 501c3 charitable organizations and are subject to federal, state, and local laws and regulations regarding political activities and campaigns. All of the views expressed by our panelists and moderators tonight are shared exclusively in their individual capacities and do not represent the views of any of tonight's co-sponsoring organizations. But we're excited to hear their voices. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to a wonderful evening with you.
Hold the mic right there. Y'all ready? LFG? 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 Let's welcome our fabulous host back to the stage.
Thank you.
Hold on now. I'm gonna stand right here because I feel important behind the podium. Okay. Now listen.
Very presidential.
Very Kamala Harris.
I'll be your vice president.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
A ceasefire must happen. Thank you.
Well, loud enough for that. I'm sorry. See,
let's talk about it.
Right, we're going to talk about it after.
Yes.
Okay, no, seriously. We are about to begin our first panel discussion, and I think it's important to note that before we begin, there's so much at stake for LGBTQ folks, particularly LGBTQ folks of color and trans and gender nonconforming folks. And so, yeah, there's so much at stake. So we want to have a conversation from a more macro perspective about what's at stake nationally, and then from a more micro perspective about what's at stake locally, right here in New York State, right? So I want to bring two people up to the stage, two very important people, yes. Alfonso David, who is the CEO of the Global Black Economic Forum, and Amara Jones, who is the founder of Translash. We also want to read their bios, because it's important for you to really get some depth and understanding as to who's coming on the stage.
Get into it.
Okay, so Alfonso David. Well, yes. Alfonso David serves as the president and CEO of the Global Black Economic Forum. One time for the one time. I wish I had a clues bomb. Right. Clap it up for that. A black president. You don't see that every day. Come on, somebody. Mr. David also brings more than 2 decades of experience in private, public, and not-for-profit sectors, where he's worked to advance the rights of marginalized communities through policy, legislation, litigation, and advocacy. One more time, pause and clap for that. Thank you, thank you. Dramatic flair. And during his time in public service for the state of New York, Mr. David was instrumental in drafting and advancing landmark legislation that removed legal barriers allowing for same-sex couples to marry, paving the way for the United States Supreme Court to rule in favor of marriage equality nationally. Okay, clap for that. You can love who you love and marry who you want to marry.
Nationally.
Okay, that matters. Okay, introduce her.
Wow. Please, the president. Please, my goodness. Up next, the one and only Amara Jones. Amara is the creator of Translash Media, a cross-platform nonprofit journalism and narrative organization which produces content to shift the current culture of hostility towards transgender people in the U.S. She was named by Time magazine as one of 100 most influential people on the planet. Okay, in 2023. She is someone that is so special and dear to me. Every time I see her, my heart just lights up. So, give it up one more time for my girl, Amara Jones, a strong, black trans woman. My gosh,
yes.
We'd love to see it.
Give it up for Amara Jones and Alfonso David.
Come on up to the stage.
guys with long snakes in order to maneuver on this stage. Hey, Alfonso.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
We have less than 2 weeks to go before the election.
So I heard.
So you heard. And we want to spend a few minutes talking about this election, the issues that affect marginalized communities, and specifically LGBTQ people. So let's give this some context. For the past several decades, we've made significant progress in the public, the private, the not-for-profit sectors. But we are seeing a regression all across the country, and specifically for transgender and gender non-conforming people. Can you talk a little bit about what this election means for you and what this election should mean for all of us as we anticipate what's going to happen on November 5th?
Yeah, well, I have written a lot and done a lot around this election so far, and I think that the thing that I hold is that I think that for trans people, and specifically Black and brown trans people, that this election is truly an existential one. And I don't say that lightly, because we have one candidate in particular who has spent, y'all can guess who has spent tens of millions, which one is it? Who has spent tens of millions of dollars.
I think we can say factually who it is.
Oh, it's Donald J. Trump. And who spent tens of millions of dollars in anti-trans ads in the last couple of weeks as a part of his closing argument for why he should be president. And he has increasingly folded anti-trans rhetoric into his speeches, most recently as a part of a litany of people in a speech that he gave in Philadelphia 2 weeks ago that he alluded to would be among those who would be purged on day one. Because we know that he said that on day one that he intends to institute dictatorial powers in order to deal with people who he believes that are unseemly. And I think that January 6th shows us that we should take him seriously. He appears to be shooting from the hip, but he actually isn't. He knows what he's doing. And so consequently, I think that this is an existential election. I don't think that it's a normal one where people can compare these two candidates as the same and different and how are they, and it's not. There's one who is a standard politician who does what politicians do, which is to try to accommodate lots of different people, and a lot of times that's just messy and some messy trade-offs, and that's the way that our system works. And there's another politician who is talking about purging and eliminating groups of people from the United States, and that's the choice.
Do you think a lot of people know that specific issue, that the former president has essentially said he's going to purge trans people? And do you think most people understand what that means?
Well, people who have come from conflict zones and nations understand.
I know what that means.
You know what that means. As a child of Liberia, now fully American, of course. I think that people who have experience in countries where politicians follow through on threats like that understand that it's not just loose talk. I think that my parents and my parents' generation, who grew up in the South in Jim Crow, who the terrorism was not something that was distant for them. They experienced it in their youth. I remember my stepfather telling me the last year that he remembers someone being lynched. It was when he was about 11 years old. So I think that if you have that as a part of your experience, you know to take these people seriously. You know what that looks like. But most Americans, and a lot of trans people, and even sadly a lot of our trans siblings who are not Black and brown, that it's not something that's a part of their history, a part of their makeup. It doesn't live in their bodies, and so it just seems esoteric, but it's not. So I think I think that Americans have had a really long time of overall peace and don't understand what it looks like when a country is about to slide into authoritarianism. And one of the things that we've done is that sometimes we're a little loose in how we use that word. Like, we say that everything's fascist, we'll be like, and we just throw it around when it is about targeting a group of people in a certain way. But fascism is, about how you use the power of the state to eliminate groups of people who are undesirable. That's literally a key part of what fascism is. And I think that we have to be really clear that that's what we're facing. And to just wrap up the part of this answer, I was talking to a black gay man who was a reporter once upon a time in conflict zones in Africa. He covered a lot of child soldier stories in Sierra Leone specifically. And I said to him, as a war correspondent reporter, you kind of know in your body when things feel like they're gonna go off the rails. Like, you have a sense of when danger is real and when isn't. And I said, I'm asking you how you feel in your body right now about America and the possibility that it slides into, political violence and authoritarianism. How does it feel to you? And he paused and he said that no one had ever asked him that before, but that he felt that America was very, very close. It's literally the quote.
I can second that thought. I had the unfortunate experience of going through a civil war. I grew up in Liberia, West Africa, and on the fateful night, April 12th, military guards came to our house with machine guns and started shooting at our doors, trying to get in to kill us, and we had to escape. And they effectively assassinated my uncle, who was the president of Liberia, and put my father, who was the mayor of Monrovia, into prison. And he was in prison for 18 months because of his political views. So, but your point is well taken, because if you haven't had that experience, if you've lived in the United States for a long time, the concept that democracy could be taken away seems somewhat elusive. It doesn't seem real. And I think that's one of the things we want to drive home for folks tonight. Yes, we can talk about all of the other issues, but if we effectively lose our freedom, then none of it really matters. And so we wanted to start this conversation by talking about freedom, talking about democracy, and talking about what these candidates, what they will do to either advance democracy or effectively destroy it. And just to continue this thread, let's talk briefly about Project 2025. I think we have to, because and we're not going to spend that much time on it, but the reason why it's important is because just in the event someone has not heard about it or has not had the opportunity to read the 900 pages that is Project 2025. I unfortunately spend an entire weekend reading the whole thing. Let's talk about the top lines for folks. What do you think folks should know about Project 2025?
Yeah, you touched upon democracy as the lead-in to this. And I just want to underscore that the democracy that we are fighting for is not the democracy that we have, right? Like, I want everyone to, because a lot of people get cynical and like, this is democracy, blah, blah, blah. It's not what we need it to be, and so, let's burn it all down. And it is true, it's not what we need it to be, but the whole point of democracy is that you have the chance to fight for the thing that you're trying to make. That's literally what democracy, it's a process, right? And so, yeah, it's not what people want it to be, and if it's not what you want it to be, then as you know, you get into the arena and you fight in order to make it into what you want, because that's what everybody else who has made democracy work for them has does, is that they get in the ring and they figure out how they're going to battle it out and make it work for them. And I think that the dangerous thing about Project 2025 and the dangerous thing about this election is that the whole point is that it's working to take away the prospect of democratic possibility away from everybody as an option, right? That's the whole thing. You may choose to use your vote or you may choose to not use your vote, but it's a wholly different thing if you don't have the right to vote altogether, you see. So one of the things about Project 2025 that's essential to know that I don't think most people know is that it's essentially a blueprint for how you dismantle any democratic processes in America or any systems of remote fairness in America. So, for example, it's about closing down the Department of Education, for example. It's about using government funds to allow for right-wing churches to receive government money and to become essentially mini government agencies. Like, there's a whole suite of things in it. But I think the most important thing that's relevant for everybody in this room is that Project 2025 on page 1 talks about and focuses on trans people. It's on page 1. You turn to page 2, it's the bottom of page 1, it goes to the top of page 2. And the thing about Project 2025 is that it's obsessed with controlling people's bodies, because it fundamentally understands that control over people's bodies is control. Right? You cannot have democracy, you cannot have a free society if people aren't free in their own bodies. We know that from the history of enslavement, right? It's why democracy for African Americans for the first part of this country was a joke. If you're not free in your body, you cannot be in a free society. So in many ways, it's obsessed with trying to institute that. And so if you think that, and when you hear Project 2025, if you think that trans people or people who are non-binary and even LGBTQ people who wouldn't be able to adopt under Project 2025, who wouldn't be able to sue for discrimination under Project 2025, like, it's pretty sweeping about the way in which they would do that. And all you have to do is to look at the document, and you can't understand Project 2025 as deploying the government to control sort of the minds and the bodies of people without understanding its obsession with trans people and LGBTQ people writ large.
And just to close that loop, so we've spent decades in courts, in legislative bodies to secure protections for LGBTQ people. So you think about the right to marry, or you think about the right to adopt, or you think about the right not to be considered a criminal just simply because of who you love. All of those things are in statutes and regulations, and in some cases, executive orders. Project 2025's goal is to strip all of that away, to essentially remove gender identity and sexual orientation from every federal statute, rule, regulation, policy down the road. So when we think about the importance of this election, and again, this is a nonpartisan engagement, but you need to understand the importance of Project 2025 and the implications for your life. So that if, and Donald Trump has taken a step back from it, but if Donald Trump becomes president, those who have created Project 2025 will seek to implement it in a way that will effectively make us second-class citizens. And that's something that everyone should appreciate. So I want to shift for a minute to talk about this election through the lens of young people. We've voted in many elections, but there are many people, many young people who are voting for the very first time. And what's your message to them? We've talked about Project 2025, we've talked about the attacks on trans people and the gender nonconforming people. Is there a specific message that we need to be communicating to young people at this moment? I know.
I mean, beyond everything that we just said, I think that one of the things that I keep hearing is that a lot of young people are turned off by the election because they're like, it's just too toxic. And the rough news about life is that it's rough. You know, like it's like very unseemly. And just because it's unseemly doesn't mean that we get to opt out of engaging from it, right? That's honestly a part of growing, of taking responsibility for changing the society. It's kind, you know, you can't be like, I want to change the world, but I don't engage in politics. Like, in a democracy, literally doesn't work. Like, it's those two things don't go hand in hand. You can make the world a better place, but fundamentally changing the world, like, it has to be through political institutions, which the right wing and the Christian nationalist movement understand, which is why they've worked so hard to get hold of these systems. So I think, first of all, engage. Like, don't let the toxicity turn you off from getting to know what the candidates stand for, from doing, like researching their positions, and also understanding that another thing in a democracy is that there are no perfect choices. I learned that every time I go to get a dress. There is not a perfect choice for me. I have to choose among the best option, and then I gotta try to take that thing and make it work for me. I gotta take it to somebody so that they can make it right for me or whatever. And I think that would be what I would say, is that, like, especially at the national level, it's different at local levels. You can find people who correspond more to who you are, because the closer you get to local government, the more people are aligned with your values. But the further you get to national government, you're kind of taking the average of 330 million Americans and you're coming up with two choices. Even if you had three choices, it would be the average of 330 million people, which I guarantee you would also still be probably far away from your perfect candidate and your values. So the question is, amongst the choices, what is the best choice for you? And the third thing that I would say is, those aren't the only things that are most important. For example, in New York, there is a proposition on the ballot, Proposition 1, which would grant equality in the state regardless of gender. That doesn't exist here, and we could have it in terms of a constitutional amendment. That's important. Who is on your school board? School boards are a huge fight around LGBTQ issues. Who's on your school board? Do you know? Do you know who your council member is? Do you know who your state rep is? Who your state senator is? Who your council members are? Those things are really, really, really important. As someone said, like, the importance to your immediate life increases as you go down the ballot. So even if for some reason you decide to opt out of the presidential race, which in a year like this, I don't know why you would do, but understand, okay, that's fine. Well, from our issues, if you have other issues, of course, that would make sense. But, is to really lean into participating because of all of the other things that are affecting your life that are on the ballot.
And I would just supplement that by saying, for the young people who are still struggling with, do I vote in this election and how do I vote in this election? By not voting, you're actually making a choice. And someone else is going to vote, and in many cases, vote against your own self-interest. So if you think about all of the choices that we make in our lives, we generally don't allow other people to make those choices for us. Where you live, what you buy, what you eat, what you wear, where you go to school, you try to make those choices for yourself. And voting is one of the most consequential choices you're going to make that will inform and influence all of those things. And so, to the extent you're still on the fence, I just want to plead to you, whoever, if you were watching or if you're in this room, to make sure you appreciate that voting is actually going to empower not only yourself, but our community.
And also, one other quick thing is that, like, voting is the hallmark of democracy. Like, becoming a voter actually is, a rite of passage that you can opt into or not, but it's a rite of passage, and it's really important. Voting is essential. I saw, like, an elder who had, from 1960, she's still alive, she had a t-shirt printed up of the poll tax that Mississippi had imposed on her father, which prevented him from voting, right? So voting is historically important for especially for Black and brown people. But it's also the fact that, like, there are also really important things, like going to your local school board meeting, like going to your council member, writing your council member when there's something that really makes you upset. And believe it or not, like, some of those analog things are more important than digital things. So a state representative, if you write about, like, why does my train station suck, or why does it take so long for us to get our benefit cards, that counts 10 times more than if you send an email. So, like, the thing is that democracy also requires participation beyond voting. And so if we only look at, well, we vote and that's the only thing that we do, and so by opting out of voting, I'm opting out of, I'm choosing not to participate. There are other ways to be participating in democracy that are essential, that we also need to be equally concerned about.
I think we're pretty much closing this conversation.
Oh, I didn't get to ask you any questions.
Oh, you want to ask me a question?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
So one of the questions that I have for you is a part of democracy is like the culture overall. It's not only the voting. It's like what happens in our workplaces, what happens in our jobs, what happens in our schools. And one of the things that had happened in the wake of George Floyd is that people were like, oh my God, things are unequal. We have to make things more equal. We have to make our society more equal so that it is more stable and more equitable. And as a part of that is DEI, which you've worked on a lot. And over the past couple of years, there's been a backlash against DEI, like closing all of the openings that happened around the possibility of making workplaces more equitable, bringing in trans people to talk to big companies about how they can be better. All of that has kind of gone. And a lot of people in the broader gay community are just waking up to that fact, even though, it affected Black and brown people and others. So I'm wondering if you can just talk about DEI and the assault on DEI as an attack on democracy overall, and how we're even seeing it with respect to the way that they've labeled the vice president a DEI candidate, which, however you think of her, she clearly is not that.
So, and thank you for that question. I think what I want to say is diversity, equity, and inclusion is you. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is all of us. And we have seen a strategic attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion for years, but we're seeing it now in real time. We're seeing the fruits of the opposition because they have filed multiple lawsuits all over the country in hopes of effectively removing diversity, equity, and inclusion as a tool for equality. And the reason why we all need to be concerned about that is because this is from a same old playbook. And the idea is we're going to go after Black people. We're going to go after women. We're going to go after trans people. We're going to go after gender nonconforming people. And they do that strategically so that if you don't fit into one of those categories, you assume it's not about you. But it is about you. Because if they're looking to oppress me as a Black man, they're going to use that same strategy to oppress me as a gay man. They're going to use that same strategy to oppress her as a trans woman. And part of what we need to do better as a community is see all of those attacks as attacks on us collectively as a community. Because I represented 2 Black women in federal court. They were sued for providing grants to other Black women, right? And the argument was, if you provide funding to Black women, that violates federal law. Well, just change Black women and put gay men, or trans women, or women. The same narrative would apply. We were successful in fighting back. We beat them in the district court because this was a charitable organization that was providing grants consistent with their mission. So think about the center. Think about the center providing grants to LGBTQ people and someone arguing, oh, you can't do that. You have to provide those grants to other groups as well. That is why it is important for us to see when there are attacks on any marginalized community, we have to step in. When we're silent, and we assume that it's not about us, they are able to divide and conquer. And that's why another message for anyone who's thinking about this issue and saying, oh, I'm a gay man, I'm already married, I don't need to worry. These issues are about trans people. It is about you, right? We cannot allow our opposition to separate us and assume that an attack on trans people is not an attack on gay men. It is the same thing.
Do you have time for one more, or do we have to wrap? 2 minutes. Okay, yes, we got this. One of the things that I think is really interesting is, you have a background in politics, And I'm wondering that if you had to advise the Harris campaign for what they should be doing in the next, 10 days of the campaign to reach Black and brown LGBTQ people, what would you say? What would you advise them to do?
Well, I think they're doing a lot of work currently, reaching out to our community in a variety of different ways, and I would say they should continue to do so. What we cannot do is give up. That's the worst thing we can do. And there's some difficult conversations we have to have. I just had one this morning. A friend of mine who I've known for a long time and who's politically active is very upset about one policy issue and was challenged and not quite sure if he was going to vote. Now, I would have never known about that unless I asked the question. And that's what we all have to do. We cannot assume that our parents, our siblings, our friends, our colleagues are actually going to vote unless we actually engage in the conversation. And so I think what the Harris campaign is doing very well is continuing to engage with our community and all communities about this election and why it's important. We cannot assume that all of us, for example, in this room are going to vote. I hope we're all going to vote, but we can't make that assumption, because if we do, we may wake up on November 5th or 10th or whenever the certification ends up being and realize that we didn't do the work to have the difficult conversation to get everyone engaged.
Well, maybe they are taking our community to heart with Beyonce tonight in Houston. Did you hear 1 million people signed up to be at that arena tonight in order to see Beyonce and Kamala Harris?
Thank you all for
Thank you
having
so
us
much.
tonight.
Thank you. Amazing. So good. So good.
Beyonce! Beyonce!
Yeah. Well, I mean, my friend B is going to give you guys a quick little message because we are about to take a brief intermission. But I did hear consistently that.
McMillan, organizer, and troublemaker.
Well, hey.
Collectively, here in this
Hey, Talik.
it had to be worked for. Somebody thought it not robbery to work for this.
Let's take a listen.
Because they thought about you and I. They thought about the life we live today and the freedoms we often take for granted. I don't know about you listening, but I'm clear of that resilience. I'm clear that Stonewall riots and days of protest with leaders like Marsha P. Johnson didn't happen in 1969 in New York City for us to wallow in pity today. I'm clear that Bayard Rustin didn't just organize for the hell of it, for us to seek position and not power. I'm clear that Lawrence versus Texas 2003, Obergefell versus Hodges in 2015 didn't appear out of thin air for us to not fight when our freedoms are on the line. I'm clear that the literacy of James Baldwin that centered Black and queer identity didn't write itself for us to be written out. These things did not happen for us to lose the power that lies within our very existence. That's why it's that important that we stand together, shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, protecting the rights and freedoms that join us all together. The freedoms to love who we love, the freedom to be safe in our communities, the freedom to breathe clean air, drink clean water, the freedom to choose what we do with your body, the freedom to live and thrive in an America where you have the right to your life, your own liberty, your own pursuit of happiness. This is not a regular moment, but it's a special moment. I'm not here to tell you it's the end point, but as Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez says, it is the waypoint. It's the waypoint to building economic and political justice. It's the waypoint to protecting democracy and protecting civil liberties. It's the waypoint to protecting the environment, the world we wish to live behind. It is the waypoint that honors and protects the life of future generations that look up to you and I. So it's time to meet the moment, take the moment, and overtake the moment like we have never done before, because somebody has to work for it. And I charge you all listening that somebody be you. So make sure that you get out and vote this November and take somebody with you, because it has to be worked for if we believe in freedom, if we believe in democracy, if we believe in opportunity for all, because when we fight, we damn sure can win. Thank you so much.
All right now.
Woo! Come on, Talik McMillan. Okay. Wow. Wow. It was so black. It was so black. The production. The music, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you once again. Let's also give another round of applause for Alfonso and Amara, please, yes. And also an applause for our DJ, our ASL interpreters. Okay, oh yes. Because honey, they are putting in the work, okay? Especially with us on the mic, my God.
Don't say us now.
Okay. You see how Jersey do me?
No, I'm just it's you and me. We together.
Yes, we are. We are a package deal. Let's talk about color of change.
Yeah,
let's get
do
into it. So, color of change. This is the voting plan for everyone. So we have the QR codes. You can scan them on the screen, or you can go to the tables. They're located there as well. We want y'all to put your addresses in. There's info on where to register, what your representatives are giving for this up and coming election, because that's very, very important, especially in the different districts that we live in. And then also just overall voting on election day or before. It's really, really important to not just choose our next president, but also extremely important to choose, people that are local in our districts, in our communities, that are going to make these very important changes to not just us, but that can impact the rest of the world. So make sure. Color of change, okay?
Yes.
QR codes or at the table.
Vote down ballot. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you that yes, we are about to go on an intermission, and I want you guys to hobnob, walk around, take pictures, kiki, mwah, mwah, mwah. Make sure to use obviously the hashtags that I told you earlier when you're taking your videos and pictures. Hashtag vote with pride. Hashtag my vote my voice. Hashtag Black Queer Vote. All the good things, and tag all of our sponsors. And you want to tag Gilead. You want to tag Native Son. Right? These things are really important. Tag the center. But I also want to remind you, because like the through line that I've been hearing a lot when we're saying color of change, and we're reminding you guys the importance of voting and voting down ballot is, now I'm not for or against anybody tonight because this is a nonpartisan event. Catch me outside of this event and we'll have a chat. But I do want to remind folks who may or may not be aware that in 2016, Trump had an opposition campaign that targeted 3.5 million Black Americans specifically, and we fell overwhelmingly under the deterrence category. He does not care. Well, people don't care whether or not they don't care where you vote. They want you to stay home. Is the long and short of what I'm saying. Overwhelmingly, Black people make up a group of people who will say, "I'm too confused. I'm overwhelmed. I'm gonna stay home," and so they don't want your vote. They just want you to vote for the couch. Okay, so we need you to get off the couch, get to the voting booth, and vote down the ballot. Amen. All right, so we're gonna begin our. Who's sitting, amen? I thought I felt the spirit in here. All right, so we're gonna begin the intermission. You guys can just mingle, walk around, have a good time, and then we'll be back in 10 minutes for the next panel.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
I didn't see me up there before. Yes, ma'am. Okay, clap it up for my picture. Oh, thank you, Kylie. I was over. Period. Well, I should have said our picture, right? Clap it up for our picture, right? Yes, inclusive. Okay, no, so I know you guys remember earlier I told you that we were going to be having both I know you all remember. See, they got me together.
Check that.
I keep saying you guys, and that's the problem. And that's the problem. It's not inclusive.
Each one's each one. This is what we're here for.
And I've been taught. I'm learning now. I know you all remember that I told you earlier that we were going to be having a conversation that's both macro, so we had the national conversation, and then a more micro conversation that's more focused on local and New York State, right? So that's the next panel that we're about to bring up. It's a little dense. We're going to make sure all of the seats are filled, amen? And so I am going to introduce to you our illustrious moderators, and then I'm going to have my friend B Hawk introduce to you the panelists. So, in true fashion, we will be reading this with pizzazz. So we're going to be starting with Dr. Carla Smith, who is the CEO. Yes, right! Right. Dr. Carla Smith, who's the CEO of the LGBT Community Center. Dr. Carla is an accomplished visionary and dynamic leader with 25 years of experience in social services and the first person of color to lead this center. The first. I mean, I don't know. It's not every day you get a first. Previously, Dr. Carla served as the Deputy Chief Executive Officer at the Urban Resource Institute, which is the largest provider of domestic violence shelter services in the United States. Dr. Carla has worked to ensure awareness and to increase access to critical resources for survivors of violence and families who experience homelessness or housing instability. And that's super important because we're all just one paycheck away from being homeless. Yeah, that was a little dark, but
Tell it on the mountain.
it's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth. All right, yes, clap it up again. Woo! I didn't know this is how this was gonna go. That's cute. Okay, next, the illustrious moderator of this panel is Emil Wilbekin. Emil Wilbekin. Yes, I like. See, I live for this. Is it the tequila? Because y'all wasn't giving this before. It's got to be the drinks and the libations. I live for it. The founder of Native Son and an organization dedicated to empowering and uplifting Black gay men through positive representation and business opportunities, so important. He's also a professor at the Fashion Institute of Technology and writes for Vogue. Okay, come on, Vogue. Come on, Anna Wintour. Vogue, the New York Times, The Cut, Essence, and the Architectural Digest. Before launching Native Son, Emil served as the editor-in-chief of Vibe magazine. So clap it up for the Vibe himself. Come on.
I love it. We love Emil. I used to be a native son, now I'm a native child, so we love it. Oh yeah, I am. Because of this one. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce the amazing panelists. Up first, we have Key Williams. Okay, they, them. We love to see it. Is a queer, transmasculine, abolitionist, organizer, historian, and artist. A founding member of Black Lives Matter New York City. Okay. The aim of Key's work is to transform global cultural impact from the individual into intersectional analysis of structural oppression. Currently, Key serves as an interim of the executive director with the New Pride Agenda. Shout out to New Pride Agenda, come on now. They also are a Mellon Fellow faculty member at the New School where they co-teach a media theory course. Okay? Come on now.
Come on up, friend. Oh, you gonna go together? We love a community effort. We love a community effort.
UNITY. And then we have, last but not least, Gabrielle Souza, my girl. Oh yes, one of the ones, okay. Gabrielle is the one and only executive director of the Ochre Project, period. A mutual aid collective which focuses on supporting Black trans people and the barriers that our community faces, Since November 2022, she and her team have successfully completed multiple mutual aid distribution programs, as well as connected the community to mental health resources and safe transportation. I am one of those people, so we thank you for your work, okay? And shout out to Max. So let's bring these amazing panelists to the stage, okay? Give it up for them, y'all.
Oh, I gotta take this, yeah.
How's everybody doing? Okay, we feeling good. We're feeling in community, right? We feel that we're in a safe space. So grateful to be here at the center with y'all tonight. So this panel really seeks to highlight what is at stake in this election on a local level, right? So one of the things Amara pointed to, which I was really grateful because it's a perfect transition to this panel, is really focusing not just on the presidential election, but voting down the ballot, right? So that's the other thing we need to be aware. So we want to focus on what's happening for New Yorkers right here, right? We're all in New York. We have our Yankees caps on because we're fashion, but we're in the World Series and all the things, but we're fashion. So Dr. Carla.
Yeah, and we want to, of course, just thank Key and Gabrielle for being here and offering your expertise. We ready to get started? Y'all ready to get started?
Let's
All
get
right,
it.
Right.
Thank you for having us.
I heard a theme in the last session. I just want to shout it out because I've been saying it for a minute. There is no space between the letters, and we must take care of each other.
That's right.
Right? So looking forward to this local conversation with a similar.
I love it.
Yes.
We're in here. So, okay, so Key, we're going to start with you. The stakes are high for this election, but the one thing we keep hearing about is Proposition 1, right? Can you explain more about Prop 1 and the New York State Equal Rights Amendment, and what does it promise to do, and how will it affect the rights of LGBTQ New Yorkers at the ballot box?
Yeah, I think I'm going to echo Gabrielle before I start. Just thank you for having us tonight, and thank you for convening this community space for us to talk really intentionally about what is at stake, especially at a local level. So excited to dive into Prop 1, which is what we are exclusively calling it now. Equal Rights Amendment is a little bit, lengthy, but a little bit wonky. You will only see it as Proposition 1 on your ballot. You will not see Equal Rights Amendment on your ballot, right? So Prop 1, raise your hand if you've heard of Prop 1, at least in any of the naming. I like that. I appreciate that. So Prop 1 in a nutshell, this November, New Yorkers, as voters, we have the right to really decide whether in our state constitution, if we want to secure our freedoms, our futures, and the rights of our bodies, right? And I think there's a lot of rhetoric about Prop 1. There's a lot of back and forth about what it does and doesn't do. But essentially, it mandates that there will not be discrimination by any government body on any New Yorker in this state, period. All the other things that you hear about Prop 1, all the other conversations that are happening, essentially is that no New Yorker will be discriminated against or would have their rights taken away by the government on account of their gender, disability status, age, reproductive choices, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. And in a state like New York, one of the things that we have been doing as part of the coalition, but also as New Pride Agenda, is understanding that New York considers itself to be progressive, considers itself to be ahead of the game, but the currently only protected rights that we have as New Yorkers in our state constitution is race and religion. That's on the state constitutional level, right? And so what it would do is expand the anti-discrimination laws to cover more broadly all the rights that we have to ensure that none of us are discriminated against. And I think it's crazy that New York doesn't have a right to not be discriminated against based on your age. I think as LGBTQ New Yorkers, right, we often forget. What about the elderly? You know what I mean? What about the youth? at the same time, on both ends of the spectrum. Disability status. And so when it comes down to it, for me, when I talk about Prop 1, is making New York, New York. Because New York likes to tout itself as progressive and safe, but it's actually Prop 1 in our state constitution that would allow that to happen. And New York does have human rights laws. It does have, lower laws that is not as applicable to the Constitution. And because we know that with the Constitution, it takes a lot of different rounds to get legislation to change the Constitution. Like, how often have you heard about a state or even the country changing the Constitution? Versus, so it puts us in a place where regardless of who's in office, regardless who's the governor, regardless of who's mayor, regardless of who's president, at least New York will be protected. And that is really the main thing about Prop 1. You'll see that on every single ballot in every sense of the way.
So can you talk more about the need to protect reproductive rights, specifically in New York State? And aren't we already protected?
Yeah, I think the other thing to echo, it's a great question. The main thing with Prop 1 is also knowing that it would prevent legislators from rolling back protections. Okay. And I think this is a good segue between the first panel and this panel, is that by passing Prop 1, it, again, prevents any type of rollbacks on LGBTQ rights, on abortion rights, on reproductive rights, and that includes healthcare. That includes, bodily autonomy. That includes any gender-affirming care, IVF, the things that we think about or don't think about as New Yorkers. Like, New Yorkers are so spoiled, but our spoiledness is, like, fake, in my opinion.
Come on,
it's cultural. It's all cultural. It's not actually legislated in any real laws. It also will protect the public sector employees from discrimination. So when you're thinking about how can I not be discriminated against for my gender, my sexuality, my age, at a public sector level. And then there's things even nationally that impacts us here, like the Supreme Court is currently thinking about Lawrence v. Texas, which is the court case that deemed federally that sodomy laws are no longer a crime. Well, if the Supreme Court decides to overturn Lawrence v. Texas, Prop 1 would protect New Yorkers from sodomy laws and criminalization. I have notes because I'm a nerd, and I can't help but to be a nerd, but I also like to give information correctly, especially on these topics, right? And so I just want to, you'll see me looking down, and it's because, like, I don't want to get up here and say the wrong thing to a crowd. So you asked specifically talking more about reproductive rights in New York State. Again, for me, that goes back to the cultural ideal that we have here in New York. But what we know in Dobbs v. Jackson, which is the Supreme Court case that got overturned, since then, 22 states have introduced specifically abortion rights or bodily autonomy laws. And with that, you had over 600 different anti-trans laws being passed nationally, just in 2024. Just in 2024, over 600 laws have been put on the books across different states for anti-trans legislation. And what that means in real time for New Yorkers is that folks are fleeing those states and coming here. So I know that when we see 600 laws, Texas, Georgia, Ohio, we're like, okay, those folks are fleeing Florida, fleeing Texas, and coming to New York. And so part of what we're looking at for Prop 1 is ensuring that New York remains a safe haven so that folks can safely flee Florida and Texas and the South and come to New York and continue to get gender-affirming care, continue to have access to health care, and continue to control our bodies. And I think for me, that is the main segue of this election, of election 2024, as Amara said, is that it is a real key zero in focusing on how we can control our bodies. And when they target a very small community and be able to put the buffer zone of the other into the conversation, then folks feel like it's not about me. But we're just, it's a door knock. Because first it's trans bodies, how many transports, right? Transports bans, right? Now they're like, oh, you don't look woman enough. Right? I'm a Liberty fan. I got to shout us out because we just got the championship 50 year. Yeah, I'm going to just to mention it real quick. But there are people who have watched women's sports who are now seeing sportswomen who have been in the league for years who are considered veterans, they're now saying she's a man. So the trans, and I'm not talking about in the sense of like appearance or presentation. I'm saying that when they attack trans people, we are just the first doorknob. Because then nobody is safe, right? And as an organizer, what we always say is we keep us safe. We protect each other. We look out for each other. And so we have to understand what's really at stake here. And what Prop 1 does is really like emphasize that, but that politicians have no right to become involved in any of our bodily autonomy. Not just trans people, not just Gen Z people, but they have no right to be inside of our doctor's office with us. My healthcare provider, my doctor knows what's best for me and my family. And a politician has no right in knowing that. And so I know it's a broader answer to this question around reproductive rights, but it's a real response in the ways in which we are really under attack in a state like New York. New York is not as safe as it pretends to be. We have an anti-trans ban that's just happening in Nassau County. Trans girls being banned from sports. That went from the executive level. The executive county legislator tried to pass it. They sued. And then they said, well, you can't do that as an executive, but you could do it if you go to the legislator. And then the legislative body undertook it and passed it. Right here in Long Island. And it's being repeated again in Rochester, being repeated again in Buffalo, right? So we're not too far off. New York is not too far off. And for me, as an organizer, as somebody who really takes this work seriously, it's like if we lose New York, just think about it. If you lose New York, where are people fleeing to?
Right. Yeah, please.
Thanks, Kate. Very, very important to remember. It's about all of us, right? And their desires to divide us are to make us weaker and not protect each other. So really remembering that. Before we move to Gabrielle, just a follow-up. Emile talked about making sure we vote down the ballot, right? Not just looking at those things that are at the top. So you talked about Prop 1, but there are 5 others on the list for us to vote on. And so can you talk a little bit about those other proposals, their origins, goals, and the potential impacts on communities like ours as well?
All right, so raise your hand if you heard of Prop 1, the Equal Rights Amendment. Raise your hand if you've heard of Prop 1, the Equal Rights Amendment. Raise your hand if you've heard of Prop 2 through 6. The difference in those hands, right? I can't say that. However, I'll talk more about, making your own choice. So Prop 326 is an interesting thing, and as I said before, I'm a nerd, and so yes, I have notes, but also like the best way to explain it is the girls are fighting, y'all. The political girls, they're fighting. This is what's happening with Prop 236. It's they're fighting, and I'm loving it in the worst way, and I echo what you said. Prop 2 through 6 are citywide proposals. So the way that you have Prop 1, that would change the New York State Constitution. Prop 2 through 6 would change the New York City Charter or the New York City Constitution. That's the best way to understand it. But the crazy thing about 2 through 6 is that y'all boy, Mayor Eric Adams, I'm sorry to put that on y'all. I'm sorry. They them. He created a 13-member Charter Revision Commission Board. This board was created about 4 months ago. And it is that commission board, Mayor Adams' commission board, that drafted these 2 through 6 propositions. And essentially what they do is a variety of different things. And what I want to really emphasize here on 2 through 6 is that there's a little bit of a beef, a little bit of tension going on from over 40 elected officials, city, state, federal, and over 60 different nonprofit community-based organizations have come out in opposition of 2 through 6. And the reason really overall is that it removes a lot of power that currently is placed on the legislative and gives it to the mayor. And so your legislative is your city council members, the folks that you vote for, that you elect, that live in your district, that have offices in your district, who you have to be responsive to. I know Tiffany Caban is tired of me, but I definitely emailed her hey, we need trash cans on this corner. And she's like, we have so much other things, Key, I can't deal with that right now. She also was at the Liberty game. Hey, I'm a fan. But basically, Prop 326 is crazy because, in comparison, for Prop 1, just to like put it big picture, for Prop 1, it had to go through 2 rounds of legislative approval. So they had to vote on Proposition 1 twice at the New York State Congress level. Our assembly members, our senators. They voted on that in 2022 and 2023 to put it on the ballot, which is where we are now. In comparison to what Eric Adams is doing, is 4 to 6 months with no city council member oversight, automatically on your ballot for you to decide in 10 days if you want to change the city's constitution. So when I say I can't tell you how to vote, I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm just telling you that look at the processes. For something that is going to provide protections and discrimination for all New Yorkers statewide, it took several rounds. For something that's going to impact everyday New Yorkers, where we are a huge populace that represents the majority of diversity in this state, 4 to 6 months. And when I said the girlies are fighting, it's because city council members themselves had proposals that would pull back some of the mayor power and give it back to the people. And he was like, actually, no, I'm just going to overturn that and put my own ballot measure on the ballot. So that's 2 through 6. And to wrap it up, just to kind of give you an example of what you'll see and why it's important for us to know kind of these nuances and these details, is that when you read it on your ballot, when you go to vote in 10 days, or maybe early voting, which starts tomorrow, tomorrow, the 26th, right? I'm voting early, probably on a Tuesday, because I'm not trying to deal with it, not this weekend. I got things. But when you read Proposition 2, for example, it'll be framed as cleaning public property. So on the front end, how it's languaged is that it would give Department of Sanitation New York workers the rights to kind of oversee beyond streets and sidewalks and include public parks and highways. Sounds good, right? Like, we need Department of Sanitation to be able to clean the parks and the sidewalks. But in addition, it gives them the right to add enforcement of regulations and gives them the right to basically execute fines and tickets against our street vendors. So on a short note, it basically turns Department of Sanitation workers into NYPD. I'll just say it because it allows them to it gives them the right to execute fines and tickets. And we know as marginalized community members who's going to be targeted in the public parks. Who's going to be targeted on our streets? It's going to be our street vendors, our migrant community, our folks who are trying to hustle and bustle and make a living in the city that is currently unlivable. But when you see it on your ballot, it's going to be like cleaning public parks. It's not going to provide the nuances of how these things impact. And again, going back to the fact that it's not necessarily how you vote, it's what you're voting for. And so a process that's rushed, that's taken 4 to 6 months, does not allow you to really understand the impacts of what you're voting for. And once it's in the city charter, it's harder to get out. It's the same reason why for Proposition 1, once it's in the New York State Constitution, it's harder to get out. So just think about those measures on the end. So yes, Proposition 1, discrimination laws, protections, yes. Proposition 2 through 6, questionable.
Okay. All right.
Really important to understand those nuances, so thanks, Keith, for pointing that out. I'm going to shift over to Gabrielle. So beyond just picking a president or elected officials, we must consider what are the emerging and community needs that are raised by this political movement. We've been talking about that tonight. You, Gabrielle, are doing such great and impactful work at the Okra Project. Give it up, give it up, give it up.
Yes, yes. No, give it up, give it up, give it up. Give it up.
Give it up. Give it up, y'all.
For those that don't know, the Okra Project is supporting Black trans people, not just here in New York, but across the United States. Can you share more information about the work of the Okra Project and how you see your role in addressing community needs at this time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. First of all, I also want to thank y'all for having me tonight and allowing me to speak here. For those of y'all who know me, also, I'm very behind the scenes, so I never really come out and speak on panels and things like that.
And y'all are doing all the things, so
thank
we are
you.
grateful.
But also, I'd like to echo Key. I am also a nerd. I do a lot of research and things like that. And so if you see me look down at my phone, I'm looking at the notes that I've taken. But to let you all know who the Ochre Project is and who I am as the executive director of the Ochre Project. We are Mutual Aid Collective, and we provide direct resources to Black, trans, and gender nonconforming people through our programming. I became the executive director in 2023. And I had a vision of creating a very robust system of programming for Black, trans, and GNC individuals right here in New York City, but also on a national level. I always tell people I myself, as a Black trans woman, am a product of mutual aid. So it would not be lost on me to understand what it means to give back to my community in the same way that my community has given to me. And so, yeah, we've created, with the help of my team, we've created a very robust system of programming around housing and food insecurity and mental health and wellness that is just so important right now, especially in these challenging times, because we don't know where we're going and what the vision of our country looks like. And organizations like the Ochre Project are really the pillar of community, because we are the ones that show up and create those social safety nets that the government and these systems at large don't provide to us as Black people, as Black queer people, as Black trans people, and it's so necessary and it's so needed. So I'm so just like taken being able to do this work and listen to my community. Even through our programming, you know, we have things in place where we get to ask community what they need. You know, it's not just us pumping out programming, it's us actually engaging with community on a grassroots level and saying, you know, what is it that you all need? What is it that you want to see and what you all want to see us do? That creates the Ochre Project. So it's not just me, it's not my team, it's also a community effort.
Thank you so much.
I love that. So what do you think is important for us to keep in mind as we hold space for community during an understandably challenging, uncertain time? So many people here tonight are visibly stressed, but have said, I'm so stressed because of the election. What would you, what do you think we should keep in mind in terms of holding space and community?
You know, one of the things that I will say is I love my community so much, so I will start off by saying I got y'all. Like, that is hands down, I got y'all. Like, the Ochre Project, I'm sure organizations like the Center and also Key's organization that you're leading right now, honey, also has y'all. But, you know, we started this work in 2018. You know, if anyone is familiar with the work that the Ochre Project does, like we, you know, it was around food insecurity. Again, we've created a robust system. And I really lean into some of my mentors, you know, one of those individuals being my sister and also my mother, Cecilia Gentili.
Yes.
Who taught me a lot about how to show up not only for myself, but show up for my community. And so as we really enter these challenging times and uncertain times, I've been writing myself about what I can do for myself, but also what I can do for community in leading this organization. And there's just a couple key points, and I have them here. And number one, I think, is empathy and active listening. And so we're doing active listening right now by having this community forum and listening to each other and talking, and also just having empathy for each other who have differences in opinions. You know, I'm very active. You know, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm very active on Twitter, even in politics and things like that. And I've come across a lot of conversations of differences in opinions on how we should vote and how we should lean into current politics and things like that. But making sure that we hold space for one another and understand that we all have different views. We all also have different needs. But how are we having those conversations, and how are those conversations constructive? Number two would be affirming community resilience. We are a community of resilience. I mean, you look back at some of our trailblazers, Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, that like started all of this work. So like, make noise about that. And like, those are the pioneers that have passed the torches to Black trans women like me to continue this work. And just really sitting in that. Like, we are a resilient community. Like, we have the power to make change. I have seen it. I have done it. Everyone on this stage has done it. Everyone in this audience has done it in some capacity. So really remembering like our roots and where we came from and the power that we hold as individuals, as Black, trans, and queer individuals is so important. And so really standing in that and being grounded in that. I think focusing on resources and protection. Resources is, of course, like making sure that you're engaging with community organizations on your local level. How are you supporting those organizations? Volunteering, talking to people, letting other people know that there are resources out there. I cannot tell you how many times that I have met someone like at a bar in a club setting that's in community, and we're just having conversation and we're talking about like, what is it that you do? And I'm like, oh, I lead this organization and this is what we do. And they're like, are you serious? Like, these are the resources that you all provide to community? I did not know that. And then I have conversations with that person past that level, and they're telling me, you know, what it is that they need, and they didn't know, you know, that these kind of resources were out there. So making sure that we're sharing that information, and encouraging informed advocacy. I think one of the things that is important tonight is having Key here to be able to talk about Proposition 1 and 2 through 6 and educating community, because we saw the hands that were raised that didn't know about certain propositions and things like that. And also, Key, I'm going to ask you later, like, where can we find that on the ballot so people know that too when they look at it, when they go and vote? Oh, flip it over. Flip your ballot over. But also, like, in conversations that I've also been having with colleagues and community, there's a lot of misinformation that's floating around. And so making sure that we're having informed conversations around advocacy and what that looks like as far as protecting yourself and protecting your siblings and things like that. And lastly, prioritizing self-care and wellness. You know, listen.
My head went down.
Literally. Self-care and wellness is my middle name. Let me just tell y'all, I do not mind, honey, sleeping in. Let me tell y'all, I do not mind. I will say I am not taking meetings until 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. Listen, my wellness and my self-care is top priority, and I encourage all of you all in community, especially as Black, trans, and queer people, to do the same, to keep a sane mind. And making sure that those that you love and your siblings are doing the same for themselves. So that's whether... Listen, we have two programs that are rolling out at the end of this year to close out Q4, which are really centered in those things. So listen, apply to those programs, make sure that people are taking care of themselves, make sure that you're taking care of yourselves, and we can move through this together. And I think that's the word that I will end this on, is togetherness.
Thank you. Like, I want more. Right, I want more. Where can we get more information about the Okra Project?
Yeah, so we have www.theokraproject.com as our website. You can follow us on Instagram at The Okra Project. You can also follow us on Twitter at The Okra Project to stay up to date with what we're doing, where we are, and all of our program rollouts. And yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Mama Souza.
As you should.
Period.
As you should. As
Period.
you should.
And I'm definitely following you on X, because all the things.
All the things on X.
And New Pride Agenda, where can we find more about New Pride Agenda?
Yeah, same, newprideagenda.org, at New Pride on Instagram, New Pride on X or Twitter. Yeah.
Yes.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So we are so thankful for y'all. I'm just really grateful to the center too, and co-collaborating and co-conspiring on this, because we were very intentional about making sure that it's LGBTQ across the board. But I cannot underscore how much the Black trans community has really stood up for us, right? Has really fought for us over the years and today. So we thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you so much.
Stonewall. Y'all up next? Our fabulous host.
One more time, y'all, please, please. So many gems were dropped tonight. What we really needed, no shade, was an LGBTQ town hall with Trump and Ms. Harris. You know, shade, because we really need to get them together. But you know, that's the past. Let's talk about the present and the future, right? Okay. So let's talk about post-election. Let's get prepared, because we don't know what's going to happen. So let's come together and get some things done. There's a post-election town hall registration happening. So there's a QR. Oh, there it goes. Wow. Come on, trans tech. Okay, queer tech.
Period.
So scan the code. There are also, I believe the codes are also at the table. So register for that. Also register for Color of Change. Make sure you log into that website, get all that done. Also, I'm going to repeat the hashtags, okay? Because these are very important for the social media girls and theys and thems and everyone in between. Hashtag my vote, my choice. Hashtag vote with pride. Hashtag pride to the polls. Hashtag black queer vote. I feel like I'm on RuPaul's Drag Race. If you know, you know. But yes. Is it?
All right, yeah.
You get it. Maybe I'll take somebody's job on that show as well.
Period. As you should. Okay, so I, as you can probably get from the energy and the vibe, we have reached what feels like the tail end of today's production. No, y'all should clap and also be sad. It's been a vibe. Y'all have been a great crowd towards the end. In the beginning, y'all was making me work for it. Okay, so I am going to introduce my friend, Trevon Mayer. You know what's crazy? I've done, right, woo, clap for Trevon.
Short story, Sicily, 1912. Go.
I'm like, hold on. Is my mic micing the way it should be micing? Okay, because I can't
this
hear
thing
it.
recording?
Is this? Oh, well, hold on. No, okay, wait. Let me be professional and introduce. Okay, so Trevon Mayers, what I was going to say is I've hosted several events here and introduced you several times and have never given you all your things. So as I'm reading this, I'm like, hold on. Now, all right, come on, somebody.
Here comes the flair.
He currently serves as the Senior Director of Advocacy and Community Engagement, where he's responsible for oversight, vision, and implementation of the center's statewide LGBTQ advocacy initiatives and government affairs work. He also has been the recipient of the Eastern Regional Social Justice Award in recognition for his trailblazing civic and advocacy leadership, as well as the Democracy Champions Award for being a part of a successful multi-year effort to overhaul voting rights in New York State. We love a good bio. We love a good person. Clap it up for my friend Trevon.
Woo! Bow, 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 bow.
All right, I'm gonna be quick because the bar is closing and I want y'all to get your last drinks in. But I just wanted to thank y'all for being here, for the folks that are in this room, for the folks that are tuning in online. Thank you for being here and just taking the time to talk about like what's at stake in the election. I think that's really important. And I want us to remember that the center will remain a place and a resource and a lifeline for many LGBTQ people, not just in New York City, but across the country. And I want us to just be mindful of that as we think about what's at stake in the ballot box. You know, we have talked a lot about tonight about like what community care looks like. And I want you all, if you haven't had a chance already, to just meet your neighbor, meet someone else in this room, because no matter how the election turns out, we are what we got. We are the community that we are seeking. And so I just want us to make the most of this moment and our time together in this shared space. I also just want to like thank all of the panelists and MCs for tonight. Thank you if you all want to clap it up for them. This has been a really important conversation. So thank you all for being here again. And also we shared a little bit about the QR code. So again, no matter how the election turns out, we are going to be holding space in this room on November 13th for a post-election town hall to talk about what we do next. So, you know, there's been a lot of conversation about like what the candidates look like, but after voting is over and the dust settles, we have to come back together and figure it out. And so on November 13th in this room, we'll be having a post-town hall conversation about what that looks like for us to hold space for community to move forward. So yeah, if you haven't already, there are QR codes on the back tables to please register. Again, clap it up for yourselves for being here. And thank you. The bar is open for a couple minutes, so get your last drink. Thank y'all.
And I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you all in person in New York. I'm here to just say a couple of things that need to happen this election cycle, and I want to invite you all into the work. First is the vote. Check your